Money FM 89.3. Best of breakfast. Morning Shot.
Welcome to Morning Shot with me, Audrey Seek. And today we are turning to workplace injuries. They don't just hurt the people involved, they can take a costly toll on the business as well. The Ministry of Manpower says 94% of work injury claims are covered under the Work Injury Compensation Act, or WICA. And while insurance often covers the bulk of costs, navigating the claims process isn't always straightforward. While fraudulent cases are rare, less than 3% face objections. High-profile cases have raised questions about whether employers fully understand their responsibilities and if there are enough safeguards to protect both sides. So how should employers handle these claims responsibly, protect themselves, and still do right by their workers? Joining me to break this down are Jonathan Yuen, Head of Employment and Benefits at Rajah Tann. Good morning, Jonathan.
Hi, good morning.
Great to have you. And joining us is also Ang Yuit, President of the Association of Small and Medium Enterprises. Ang Yuit, great to have you on as well.
Great to be here.
Great to have the two of you. So, Jonathan, let's start with the basics, okay, and bring up, the catalyst for this chat. The recent case involving the local salad chain Sumo Salad, where the late owner, Jane Lee, alleged a former employee staged a fall to claim compensation, has really shown a spotlight on the workplace injury claims process here. For those unfamiliar with all of this, how does WICA actually work in practice, and what are the key responsibilities for employers when an injury happens?
So I think the first thing is, it's really unfortunate what happened, and I don't want to speculate as to what really happened in her case, but let's take a step back and let's get a sense of what WICA is. The Work Injury Compensation Act was enacted to provide a streamlined, no-fault process for employees to claim compensation for work-related injuries, right? Or occupational diseases. And let's just get this straight. The entire process is intended to be claimant-friendly, and the employee is not required to prove that the employer was negligent, unlike claims in court where the burden of proof is on the employee. So the employee will be compensated as long as the injury happened in the course of work. And that's why we say WICA is a no-fault regime. But in exchange, of course, the trade-off is the amount of compensation is kept under WICA. So to your earlier point, who does this apply to? And WICA applies to all employees regardless of salary level, except for domestic workers, self-employed persons, and the uniformed personnel.
Okay, so when it comes to WICA, are all businesses or workers on level ground or created equal, so to speak, like restaurant worker versus construction worker versus salad bar employee? Is everyone covered the same way?
Right, so the way the Act works is it's split along how much the worker makes, and the employers are mandated to get work injury compensation insurance for employees doing manual work or earning $2,600 or less a month. And this applies to both local and foreign employees. But here's the catch. For all other employees, the employer has a flexibility as to whether or not to buy insurance for them. So we always tell employers, please buy insurance regardless, because the act is quite wide, and if an injury happens in the course of work, you become liable.
Yeah. All right, so Yuit, bringing you in now, of course, the bulk of our businesses are SMEs. So from your experience, how prepared are these small businesses in, handling this whole process? Do most know what to do the moment a claim arises, or is it usually a case of reacting as they go along?
Yeah, most of the time. So if you are an SME and you employ, let's say, a foreign worker, you have people in the workman space or construction, most of the time you are quite aware of what are your liabilities and what you've got to handle and buy as a basic level, like a WICA. I think for listeners tuning in, and if you're a business owner and you're saying, hey, but I've got 5 staff and I don't recall buying WICA. The reality is that for many who don't employ workmen and you're employing a staff sitting in the office, WICA is not mandatory.
Okay.
And therefore, when there's some injury that happens and you've got no insurance, that becomes a bit of a challenge because then you have to react.
Yes.
And most companies look at a need-to basis in terms of their policies. And in this kind of situation, when the urgency comes in, the need is immediate. So I think what we've got a HR Human Capital Action Group within the association, and we talk about these things all the time. And it is of a good practice for people and for business owners to actually at least get basic coverage so that you have a peace of mind to handle, no matter whether your workforce is primarily manual labor or you have people sitting in the office doing clerical or PME work.
Yeah. Okay, so even when insurance is in place, and, in the Sumo Salad case, we saw the insurer cover expenses quite quickly, employers usually still have follow-ups and, reporting duties. So, Jonathan, what are the key legal and procedural steps businesses need to get right in those early days after the incident?
The employer ultimately, the first principles is the employer is still responsible, and until the insurance kicks in, the employer still has to do the basic coverage. But I think it's the WICA claims process is a very well-oiled machine, and the designated insurers that MOM works with are also very fast, and they come in relatively quickly. So, as Yuit said, most businesses that have a manual element to it, a workman element to it, are actually quite familiar with this entire process. I think it's the instances where businesses have people that are more office bound and they face WICA claim for the first time, I think, and that's where the difficulty is, because that's not their common operating process.
Yeah. So, speaking of these difficulties, for SMEs in particular, do they usually have the resources, the HR, legal, financial resources to handle a claim smoothly? What are the common gaps that you see?
Yeah, so you're typically looking at SMEs with a headcount of less than 20 people. Very often, you're looking at one shop owner in a retail space is maybe 5 to 7 people. So in this kind of situation, whenever such things come in, most of the time the business owner has to jump in and handle it himself. You've got no real HR. Most of the time in HR support that a business has is primarily administration, right, payroll, and so no one's capable of handling this. Most of the time the onus is on the business owner himself to do this. So amongst the many other things that he has to deal with, firefighting or bringing business in, now he's got an additional responsibility to handle this injury compensation or injury situation. So that adds a lot more stress to a typical owner in this kind of situation.
Yeah, speaking of stress, let's shift gears to various types of claims. Business owners do face a lot of stress from operating. So what are the other types of cases that come to mind, Jonathan?
Wow, this is, that's why it's always really tough being a business owner. I think the ASME knows that they don't have large HR departments, finance departments, corporate compliance or legal departments in-house to deal with everything. And a business owner will face a plethora of claims, from example, everything from employees alleging a breach of contract. They will run to TAFAP and make allegations against the business owner and the company. They will allege things like failure to pay salary or bonuses that are not paid. Now you have a really high spike in workplace grievance and investigations relating to harassment, performance improvement plans. Employees don't get a bonus and they run to MOM. And then a lot of businesses, when they have to restructure, they have to retrench and reorganize, and that opens up another can of worms. And that's why it's really tough. And I can only say to business owners that it's really important to get your documents and processes in order.
Yeah.
Yes, these things can be relatively complicated to set up, but you need to set these things up because the cost of not setting it up will result in regulatory investigation, prosecution by MOM. You end up with a civil lawsuit and you're open up to significant liability. So, go see a lawyer. Get this done. Go and seek resources from ASME. I'm sure they'll help as well.
Yeah, so, this brings us to the big question. Just how big a problem is this really? So from both of your perspectives, how common are contentious claims and what impact do they have on employer confidence? I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think if you look at it on a general case, it is not common, okay? But if you have been running business for 10 years, I'm sure business owners who have been running for a while would tell you that they've had cases of such nature, whether it is injuries, whether it is staff not being happy with certain structures in the company. And in the current day and age, there's a lot more channels that they can actually escalate this to. And also, there is a evolution and changing of the legal framework and laws coming from the Manpower Ministry, and the business owners have to keep themselves updated. And like what Jonathan says, importantly in business, it's very important that you keep your documentation clear, you communicate it clearly in writing, and all of that gives you that foundation and base. And as a business owner, it is important to keep up to date, at least minimally up to date about where the laws are and guidelines are.
Yeah, so Jonathan, what safeguards exist to detect or challenge potentially fraudulent claims?
Right, so let's split that into two parts. For WICA claims, the work compensation claims, the first line of defense is always the insurers, because once they're activated, the insurers will be the one to manage, assess and review the claim. Right, but if you take it outside of the WICA framework, then this is happening and it's playing out in the courts, and then the employee has the burden of proof to show why the employer is liable. And I wanted to just put a shout out to those people who think that the entire legal system is very, very complicated and hard to navigate. The short answer is that over the last decade or so, the court systems have become a lot more layperson friendly, and one of the first tools that the courts utilize is mediation. So whether you bring a TAFEP claim or you decide to file a claim in the state courts or the high court, relatively quickly, once the claim is filed, the court will require parties to go for mediation, and mediation is a really, really efficient and effective way for parties to sit down and to talk about their issues and to resolve it without the adversarial process of going to court and fighting each other.
Yeah. All right, so let's wrap up with some practical advice now. What steps can employers take to protect themselves while still ensuring the process is fair and responsible for workers?
Yeah, I can start off, right? WICA, like what Jonathan says, anyone can buy. But most of the time, mandatory is just the basic if you are a workman. So actually, on our side, we do suggest that employers actually take WICA. It's not expensive. To cover all the employees is a very simple step. And then beyond that, you can assess whether you want to separately buy additional insurance. Secondly is that the legal framework and labor laws right now, there are certain changes like flexible work arrangement. And I think employers need to get themselves at least minimally updated. And if you're not sure, come to us in the association. We'll help you at least navigate that on a foundation basis.
All right, Jonathan, anything to add? Some practical tips for both employers or employees?
Well, this is more to employers, and I want to say very quickly, please get your documents and processes ready. And on the closing note, before you fire anyone, don't say, oh, I'm the boss of this business, pack up your bags and get out because you're a terrible employee. They have to go through things like due inquiry. The law requires you to give the employee an opportunity to respond. You can't just kick people out like that. Do things the right way, and if you're not sure, just check with a lawyer. Make sure that the entire termination process has gone right.
All right.
And make sure that it's fair for everyone, I think.
Yeah, make sure it's fair for everyone. It's clear that workplace injury claims aren't just about ticking boxes. They're about balancing legal duties, fair treatment, and trust in the system. Jonathan Yuen from Rajah Tann and Ang Yuit from the Association of Small and Medium Enterprises. Thank you both for your time and insights this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lots more to come on the show. Stay with us on Money FM 89.3.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.